The news headlines, March the 30th, 2020.
You found London Taxi Radio, the station for London's taxi drivers.
Many of the front pages this weekend highlight the letter written by Boris Johnson to be sent to every household in the country this week, warning that the coronavirus crisis will get worse before it gets better. The Observer describes the message as stark, while the Sunday Express says the bleak letter emphasises that the UK is facing a national emergency. According to The Sun on Sunday, it is the first time in decades that a Prime Minister has written to every household in the country to seek their help in defeating a common enemy. It is an odd move, not least because we have been warned that letters transmit a lot of germs due to the amount of people that have to handle them before they are delivered through your letterbox. The Sunday Times focuses on comments by a leading government advisor who has warned that Britain must remain in full lockdown until June to avoid the worst effects of the pandemic. Professor Neil Ferguson says he believes May is optimistic for the current restrictions to be lifted and suggests that when they are, people would probably still be asked to enforce some social distancing for months more. The paper goes on to say that cabinet sources have indicated that two criteria would have to be met before the government ends the lockdown. The number of new cases must be stable or falling, and the critical care capacity of the NHS hospitals must not be exceeded. The front page of the Mail on Sunday claims allies of Boris Johnson have turned on China over the crisis, arguing Beijing's behaviour during the pandemic will eventually result in a reckoning in relations. Ministers and senior Downing Street officials are said to be furious over what the Mail describes as China's campaign of misinformation, attempts to exploit the situation for economic gain, and atrocious animal rights records. It is worth noting, isn't it, that we have a history of naming pandemics or contagion after their country of origin. For example, Spanish flu and German measles, to name but two. If China is allowed to absolve itself of responsibility, then how the hell can they be expected to apply conditions to prevent a future outbreak? Writing in the paper, the former Conservative leader Ian Duncan Smith says nations have lamely kowtowed to China for too long, and once we get clear of the pandemic, it is imperative that we all rethink that relationship. Many of the papers feature personal stories of some of those on the front line of the fight against the virus. Celia Hassan, who is an A&E doctor, has told the Sunday Mirror that it is the scariest place that she has ever worked. She previously saw conflict in Syria as an army captain, but says right now is when she felt the most afraid. It's because this is home. There is no aeroplane out of here, she tells the paper. An anonymous doctor working at a hospital in London has kept a diary of their week for the Mail on Sunday. They describe the never-ending flood of patients and say they are forced to play God due to the frightening shortage of equipment. The Sunday Times suggests the enforcement of social distancing sank to new depths when police poured black dye into water at a beauty spot to make it look less appealing. The paper says Derbyshire police acted after receiving reports of people breaking the virus restrictions by gathering in bright sunshine at the Blue Lagoon in Buxton, prompting officers to decide it should become the murky Black Lagoon for the duration of the lockdown. The Sunday Telegraph ran an article penned by Sadiq Khan. The headline stated, "You can save lives by staying off the tube." In it, he praised Transport for London for keeping the public transport network moving and claimed nearly a third of TfL staff were now off sick or self-isolating. Maybe that number wouldn't be so great if Sadiq Khan hadn't claimed that the tube was perfectly safe to use just 2 weeks ago. There is also an article on how the sharing economy suddenly found itself in isolation, claiming as self-isolation becomes the norm, firms such as Uber and their investors are feeling the pinch. In a pandemic, the problem with renting is that other people have touched the items first, be it scooters, bicycles or cars that now look like vectors of disease. So if you use the service, the chance of contracting coronavirus can sit alongside the heightened risk of being involved in a collision or a victim of inappropriate behaviour. Special mention that most papers reported on the tragic loss of Cabby Spencer Courash, aged 56, who had bravely decided to continue working as a taxi driver in London to ferry people around the city. Paying tribute to her chatterbox dad, Natasha said, "We just can't believe he is not here. It just hasn't sunk in yet. Dad was an amazing and kind man. He was looking forward to getting back to work and helping ferry NHS workers around London. He was always such a giving, compassionate person. He was your typical cabby also. He was a chatterbox and had opinions on everything. And that is something we can all vouch for." Our thoughts at this time not only go to Natasha, but the friends and family of 2 other elderly cab drivers that have sadly succumbed to the virus. That's all from what the papers say this Monday. Stay safe, keep healthy, and remember, if you need help, there is no harm in asking for it. You will be amazed at how many people are willing to help. Be good, and I'll see you out there on the other side.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
No hell below us.
Above us only sky.
Imagine all the people
living for today. Yeah.
Imagine there's no countries, yeah.
It isn't hard to do.
Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living for today. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
I hope someday you will join us, and the world will live as one.
Imagine no possessions.
I wonder if you can.
No need for greed and hunger.
Brotherhood of man.
Sharing all the world. You. They may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
I hope someday you'll join us,
And the world will be as one.